hold on.
Start for Trice. That's Chase, and what a start for Cincinnati. And he has the football. Puts a move on. Bijan Robinson, he's going to have his first NFL touchdown. Gibbs out of the backfield right away. Oh, yeah, there's no question that he was grabbed. They got Gibbs one-on-one with Andrew Van Ginkel in space, and that was it. And this is, again, it's man-to-man. It's one-on-one, and he's underneath. He loses his balance. Block Bowers is one of those guys that has a – and this is –
Brant, first of all, welcome everybody to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty Podcast, presented by the Fantasyholics, coming at you live on the Fantasyholics YouTube and X pages. I am Bo. That is Brant. Brant, I'm so giddy for this episode because first of all, it's our first Wednesday back together for some time. We took a little time off to refresh the batteries, get some different content ideas, get ready to get back, right? And we were talking pre-show about why one of the many reasons, one of the vast many reasons the NFL is one of the funnest sports out there. You are a diehard Seattle Seahawks fan. I am a diehard Atlanta Falcons fan. And you and I's existence in the football world couldn't be any further from the same at this point. Your team is preparing for, nothing this week. They're on a bye week with the number one seed in the NFC, preparing for a second round matchup in the divisional round of playoffs. My team just fired their head coach and GM. We both have a whole reason to be excited right now. Different strokes for different folks, if you will, but it's one of those things that makes the NFL great. I was celebrating Black Monday. You're celebrating getting ready for playoffs. Where can you find a sport like this, Brant?
Yeah, no, you really can't. I mean, it's season's done. Coach is fired. You saw coaches that you had no idea would even be on the chopping block. They were one kick away from playoffs to getting booted out the door. It's crazy on how fast it could turn. You think about it, just 2 years ago, McDonald was one of the most sought after coaches, as did DC and Baltimore. And I am so glad he waited till Seattle got the boot and took his interview, and I'm so happy with the way he's turned it around this year. I know we had a 10-win season last year, missed the playoffs, but he put a stamp on it. He's done great things there in Seattle. I'm excited with what that defense is doing. I've always been a defensive-minded person, even as I coach basketball. I've always been defensive-minded, so it's awesome to see the way that our defense is playing as well. I'm still terrified of Sam Darnold. I just hope he doesn't, as I put it before the show, just sucks and stinks it up. I used other provocative words prior to the show. If he plays, the way I see it is if he plays like he did against the Niners, we're going to be a tough out in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And let's go Packers. Let's go Packers, because I don't want to see the Niners and the Rams until the NFC Championship. So let's go Packers. Let's go Green Bay. That's where I'm rooting for this week. We'll discuss the playoffs a little bit later at the end of the show on where our mindsets are with some of these matchups.
Yeah, but again, it's just for the further thing. You have spent all this time talking about playoffs and you want your team to play after the first round. Honestly, up until this morning when I had a conversation with a coworker, I honestly didn't know what day the Bears and Packers played. I knew they played each other, didn't know what day it was this weekend because I'm refreshing my X feed every 30 seconds, hoping to find some sneak breakthrough about who the Falcons are looking at for a head coach or for a GM candidate. So obviously, I alluded to us taking a break and kind of refreshing our batteries and getting some content. We're going to do for the first time for the Fatboyz, we're going to name our offseason awards that we're going to give out for the best players this season. They're going to be dubbed the Fatties, if you will. It just makes sense. It's going to be players who ate at their respective category, and we will get into that. But I think it only makes sense we're striking with the iron when it's hot, Brant. right now, the biggest story in the NFL is the coaching carousel that has started. Wouldn't shock me at all to see there be some more names potentially. A lot of people are saying that if Green Bay gets beat by the Bears first round, Matt LaFleur could be out in Green Bay. That happens. He's obviously the number one candidate for every team with a vacancy. But that's definitely a rumor that's going on right now. So nothing's finalized yet. But for we have 7 vacancies right now, Brant. We obviously have the Baltimore Ravens, the Cleveland Browns, the Arizona Cardinals, the Atlanta Falcons, Tennessee Titans, New York Giants, and the Las Vegas Raiders. So you tell me which team you want to start with, Brant, and we'll talk about a dream pairing and kind of why we like that pairing.
Let's start with your Falcons. Let's just rip it off. Let's start with your Falcons. And I'll start because you'll be a little more in depth than me. I think Stefanski makes sense to you guys. That it's a run-first coach. He wants to run the ball. You guys have, if not the best, one of the best running backs in the league. You have a very, very suitable number 2 running back. You guys' offensive line looked good at times this year, looked great at times this year. That defense was starting to come along at times. I know it kind of went down. You got no first-round draft pick this year, but where you traded to get back into it, it was definitely worth it for you guys. You guys are a young team. I think Stefanski makes sense for you guys just to continue to pound the ball and develop behind a quarterback, and to either develop a quarterback or take a little bit of pressure off of Penix when he does return, or Cousins, who will probably, I saw he restructured his contract, so I don't know if he will start the season as your quarterback.
It pretty much guarantees he's out the door, I would say. The Falcons have to make a decision by, I think, March 12th, which gives Kirk the chance to go be a starter someplace else. Basically, we're either going to start him or he's going to be gone. We save a lot of money this year by cutting him. I expect Kirk to be gone.
So, and I think it's just, it takes a little pressure. He takes pressure off the QBs because he has never had a real great one in Cleveland. So I think that it makes sense for him to go there and just continue to pound the ball there in Atlanta.
Yeah, so oddly enough, Brant, I put Kevin Stefanski as the answer here for the Atlanta Falcons as well. And you kind of started it off right where I think from a fantasy perspective, I was trying to take my personal biases out of this because I have some other candidates that I think I would prefer a little bit above Stefanski. But from a pure fantasy standpoint, imagine Bijan Robinson in a Kevin Stefanski type of running role, the way he wants the ball to be ran. I think Bijan would have even a better season than he did this year. Imagine Kyle Pitts in a Harold Fannin role. All things created equal, I think Kyle Pitts is obviously more athletic than Harold Fannin. So that would be very exciting. And one thing that Kevin Stefanski never did have in Cleveland, Brant, was a Drake London type receiver. So again, I do think, when you have a guy who wins Coach of the Year a few times, had the Browns somewhat relevant there. I do think Kevin Stefanski ends up ultimately being a very good head coach someplace. We know the Cleveland Browns have just been kind of cursed for some time. So oddly enough, I do have Kevin Stefanski just the same way you do, and it's 100% because I think Bijan would be the ultimate cheat code in a Kevin Stefanski offense.
Okay. All right. Where do you want to go next?
Well, let's just go with where Kevin Stefanski's leaving from. We'll go fill that vacancy next. Let's go to the Cleveland Browns. What do you think there?
I think it's Kubiak. You got the running backs there. You got a young quarterback. I think Sanders is the quarterback next year, pending who the coach is. But I think Kubiak makes sense there. They like to run it. They are built as a running team. And so I think he makes sense. You get yourself a little running quarterback in Sanders, and you get yourself, you got, you had Sanders there. You had, who else am I missing there in the backfield? They had
Judkins,
and Sampson. So, I mean, you've got a good core of running backs, and that's what Kubiak likes to do, is pound the ball. And that makes sense there. He's probably taken a few things from McDonald's playbook. So his defensive minded, I think he'll be all right. I think it's Clint Kubiak there in Cleveland.
Okay. For me in Cleveland, I got Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers. One of the hotter names coming into this, very young, very up and comer. My thing with Jesse Minter, I think, honestly, I have Cleveland as my second worst landing spot for one of these head coaches. And so the reason I've got Jesse Minter going there is because I think a lot of these teams are going to look for proven winners, guys that have done it before. And Jesse Minter's so young, there's going to be questions about what kind of staff he can put together. The one thing that Jesse Minter's going to have going for him is he was a defensive guru. To pair him with, Denzel Ward and, Myles Garrett. It's just kind of a dream pairing. The way he would scheme stunts for Myles Garrett, I think would be very electric. I'm not sure what I would expect for offense there because, again, Jesse Minter, he feels more like, I guess 100% John Harbaugh tree. So I don't know, or Jim Harbaugh tree. So I don't know how that translates as far as building a staff. But I do think that's one of those spots that if Jesse Minter wants a job this window and doesn't want to wait for the next window, it's going to be one of the two lower tiers. And I think one of them that he ends up taking is Cleveland.
Okay, absolutely. I like that. Let's go with the most sought after head coach. Where do you think Harbaugh ends up?
Yeah, so for me, I think Harbaugh obviously gets his pick of the litter. All the early rumors are saying he's very enamored with the New York Giants job. They have their quarterback ready to go in Jackson Dart. They got a very exciting year 2 player in Malik Neighbors. Then, honestly, they have a lot of pieces on defense to come in and be ready and compete. A lot of people are saying the owner of the New York Giants is one of the better owners to work for in football. And I just think, honestly, I think John Harbaugh has his choice. I really do, especially with the news from Shefty that 7 teams called him, and obviously the Ravens weren't one of them. So somebody that already has a coach in place is even after this guy. So he's going to go where he wants, and right now it sounds like it's the New York Giants, because he's got pieces already in place, still got a relatively decent draft pick, and all the things that go along with that.
I too put him as New York. I think that fits perfectly. You alluded to the quarterback and everything else. You got the same type of quarterback as Lamar. And so you get a young quarterback to help develop, but you also have in the backfield, you have a running back that's going to run through you, just like Derrick Henry, whenever you get Cam Scatterbo back. And then you also have a nice explosive back with Tracy, just like he had with Keaton Mitchell and Gus Edwards there, over the past few years. So it kind of seems like that team is already built for Harbaugh. So I do think that is going to be the best fit and one of the best places for him.
Okay. All right. Let's go with, in my opinion, the least glamorous job of them all, your division rivals, the Arizona Cardinals. I know you kind of said you didn't want to give them a coach because you just don't want them to be successful. But, if you had to think of somebody, who would you put there?
I don't really have a name. I don't know all the OCs and DCs that are coming out and everything. Like you said, you're looking at these coaches a little closer than me as you guys are looking for it. So I don't really have one, but in my mind, here's what's going to happen is they're going to have to get a coach that's going to develop a new quarterback, because Kyler Murray's out the door. I don't believe that he will be there. I don't think he is going to stay in Arizona. They have the weapons in Marvin Harrison and Michael Wilson, which I'll talk about later on as we get into the Fatties. Actually, there's a little preview for you. You have a young running back in Trey Benson as well. You have a defense that at times looked very good. There's a lot of young pieces there, so you have to get an offensive-minded coach, in my opinion, especially in that division. You have to be able to scheme up plays on that offense and move the ball against some of those tough defenses, because San Fran is always tough. Seattle is rising, I'm going to say, because I still think that there's room for them to grow as they are young and still putting everything together. And the Rams always put a great defense out there, even when you think the Rams are, hitting the hill of the age and everything. So you have to have an offensive-minded coach, in my mind, in order to compete in that division.
Yeah, I actually kind of went the exact opposite of an offensive-minded coach. I've got 2 names written down here that I think either one of these guys makes a ton of sense. I've got Brian Flores or Vance Joseph, kind of hard-nosed defensive guys. They're not only are they going to come in, but they're going to set a culture that needs to be established in Arizona. Going back to Cliff Kingsbury, they've kind of had I'm going to be your buddy with fun, fancy offenses that just don't work out there in the desert. I think you need to go and be a hard-nosed build it from the defense, let the offense kind of become its own thing, and try to win some games with some gritty defense out there in Arizona. So I absolutely think it's a retread like Brian Flores or Vance Joseph, somebody who can come in, like I said, set the tone, get that hard-nosed defense there, and maybe instead of scheming up offensive plays, you slow down, the Seahawks, the Rams, or the Niners offenses and try to win some slow, methodical games there in Arizona.
Okay. All right. Absolutely.
All right. You take where are we visiting next on the continental United States, Brant?
We're going to go over to the other side. We're going to go to Baltimore. Where's Baltimore going to go? I got them going with Jonathan Gannon, a defensive-minded coach. He was a DC prior. I think you want to get back to that grind-out, hard-nosed defense there in Baltimore. So I think you go with a defensive-minded coach. And so I think Gannon fits that role. And honestly, I'm not sure if Lamar is their quarterback next year. I know that they did pay him. And he is a former MVP, but I think that the offense is going to get a revamp a little bit, but it's really hard to do when Derrick Henry's there and you have, one of the most powerful runners in the NFL. But I do think that you go with a defensive-minded coach and get back to what Baltimore has always been known for.
Yeah, so I actually, again, am going to go the opposite way here from you. I'm going the rumors are that John Harbaugh, the front office wanted to bring him back. Lamar wanted to bring him back. The owner got rid of John Harbaugh, but a lot of people were also saying, well, John Harbaugh and Lamar weren't on the same page. Lamar has also come out and said it wasn't Harbaugh, it was Todd Monken. So I think what they're going to do is they're going to splash some cash at Clint Kubiak and have him come in. This is a guy that is from that Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, has those explosive offense. And honestly, if you know how successful that Seattle offense has been this year when Sam Darnold doesn't turn the ball over, imagine that offense being ran by Lamar Jackson instead of Sam Darnold, with Derrick Henry running the ball instead of Charbonnet / Kenneth Walker. I won't say an upgrade at wide receiver, but Zay Flowers runs routes very similarly, not nearly as well as JSN, and then Mark Andrews in that tight end role where A.J. Barner seems to just get lost out there and end up making big play after big play with nobody around him. I just think that when you talk about Lamar Jackson, where he's at in his career and what he means to the city of Baltimore, you're absolutely going to try to put a coaching staff in place that takes Lamar to that next level, gets him back on that MVP platform. And I think this is a team that is this time next year, we will be talking about the Baltimore Ravens as that turnaround that happened with like the Jacksonville Jaguars and some of those other teams that have missed the playoffs and get a new head coach and they're right back into it. I think a guy like Clint Kubiak, comes in there and breathes some like fresh breath air into that offense and that team and really ignites that fan base and that franchise.
I hope not. I really want Kubiak to stay, but I know he's going to.
Yeah, he's out the door, bud.
Yeah. So
he's too sought after, I believe.
Okay.
All right, we got Arizona and Vegas, Tennessee and Vegas left. You tell me which two of those you want to hit first.
Let's just move our way across. We'll hit Tennessee first, and what is my mind one of the. What do they have? They seem to add so much different stuff, and it just never seems to click. I know Cam was starting to look good. They have a bunch of young wide receivers. I got Kingsbury. I think Cliff Kingsbury sets a little fire there and gets that offense ticking, gets Cam Ward comfortable. You saw it in Miami 2 years ago. He can air it out. He has a heck of an arm. And I think Kingsbury's offensive scheme really fits that Tennessee mold that they have. They have, some good young wide receivers and a quarterback that can really air it out. And he can actually see over the line, unlike his former quarterback there in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this offense could really take a huge step forward with a guy like Kingsbury.
Yeah, you and I are copacetic on this one. I've got Cliff Kingsbury as well. I just imagine a big, strong, talented arm like Cam Ward and that air raid offense that Cliff Kingsbury likes to run and how much fun that would be. And we saw Jameer Dyke and Alec Iamore and some of these other names in Tennessee really come on and make some pushes down the stretch for being relevant. And we saw Cam Ward start to look a little more comfortable really the last 3 games of the season. Again, I think you bring in a coach that can come in and kind of develop him, kind of help him out. The last couple of years, he's kind of helped develop Jaden Daniels. You really saw, honestly, for what it's worth, Kyler Murray was much better under Cliff Kingsbury as a fantasy producing quarterback, for sure, with Kingsbury's offense than what he was under Jonathan Gannon. So honestly, you can't argue that the guy gets quarterback play to work. And I think that's what they're kind of looking for in Tennessee, is somebody to come in and develop Cam Ward, because you're stuck with him, right? You drafted him last year, number one. Obviously, you're not going to throw that in already and get rid of it. So it's going to be a coach that wants to come in and elevate him. And I think you're going to bring in a guy that can do that. A lot of people are pointing fingers at Matt Nagy because of his work with Patrick Mahomes and stuff. But we also have to remember Matt Nagy tearing up Mitch Trubisky and Justin Fields and how bad that was. So for Cam Ward's sake, I hope it's not Matt Nagy, but Cliff Kingsbury to me feels like a guy that goes in, really develops Cam Ward and takes him to that next level. Obviously, there's a lot of pieces that are needed on that team from top to bottom to make them relevant, but the offense could be fun with Kingsbury.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely agree with you there. So let's go to Vegas. And I think this is one of the most intriguing jobs to have. They have plenty of cap space with over 100 million this offseason. They have the number one draft pick. They have a explosive weapon in Ashton Genty. They have one of the best tight ends in the NFL. And I think this is a guy that we've seen mold some quarterbacks, and it just hasn't completely worked out the greatest for him. But I think that him getting one straight from the draft, and we saw what he did late in the season with Dart. I think Brian Daboll makes sense here in Vegas. Help get a brand new quarterback in there, because Geno's out the door. If Pete's out the door, Geno's out the door. And we'll keep the third round draft pick that we used to get Milroe, which Milroe threw less interceptions than Geno this year. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, I think Daboll makes sense here. You get a young quarterback in, you have some young weapons.
Jalen Milroe wouldn't have won you and I a fantasy championship this year.
That is true. That is true. But he also wouldn't have hurt us. But yeah, I think Brian Daboll makes sense here. You get a lot of chances to make some splash over there on that offense. You get you some weapons. You got some good draft picks, high draft picks, and you get to mold your own quarterback, because, like I said, Geno's out the door, and there's really nothing there. I do think that they take the kid out of Indiana. At 101, I think it only makes sense. You have to have a quarterback in there, and unfortunately, I don't think there's a quarterback in this draft class that should be worth the 101, but I think you're going to see a quarterback go 101.
Yeah, this job feels a little bit different to me versus like the Ben Johnson Bears 2 years ago, where Caleb Williams was like this superstar coming out that everybody was like intrigued by, and Ben Johnson was this bright offensive mind. I do think Fernando Mendoza has a chance to be a successful pro. I don't think of him as an all pro or an NFL champion quarterback that's going to win it without the rest of the team being put around him. But I also feel very similarly. I think Las Vegas, and the brain trust of Al Davis and Tom Brady are going to want somebody to come in that can really mentor a young quarterback, work with these young offensive pieces, and get that going to the next level. And maybe somebody that can make them, not compete for the division, because my God, when you talk about a division that's going to be hard to win, a head coach is going to look at that, taking that opportunity and going, I got to be successful in my first 3 years in that division or I'm fired. That's a daunting task in its own right. But I think there is a guy out there that makes a lot of sense. He kind of been out of the league for a few years, but I think Mike McCarthy makes a ton of sense. He was very hands-on with the development of Aaron Rodgers. We've seen how well that worked out. Definitely went into Dallas and had some very successful years with Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott really flourished under Mike McCarthy's offense. And if you look at it, Mike McCarthy was out. Who did they go to? His offensive coordinator and Brian Schottenheimer, right? So like there's reasons behind this that make sense. To me, Mike McCarthy goes and works with a young quarterback, young running back, young offense that's going to have a lot of pieces that are changing this offseason. Like you said, they have $100 million, honestly, for myself and anybody else who either likes Mendoza or you own shares in Genty. I hope they take every ounce of that $100 million and put it straight on the offensive line, because that offensive line was atrocious. But I think, again, when you talk about a guy that can really develop a quarterback, we've seen him do it a couple of times now. Mike McCarthy feels like the guy for me.
No, absolutely. I definitely could see that. be a great fit there.
All right, Brant, let's get into the star of the show. The last thing we got today. Let's talk about some guys that in our minds have, gone above and beyond to help us win fantasy championships. Guys that we stole in the draft, guys that came out of nowhere as sleepers that you may have even been able to pick up as a waiver wire target. And then, of course, our most valuable player. Who are we giving these fatties to this year, Brant? You tell me which fatty you want to start with, which award, and we're going to go there.
I think you start just like anywhere else. You start with your breakout or your steal of the draft here. You start with one of the lower. It wouldn't be the lowest award, but you start with the lower award. And I go with the steal, and my steal was Javonte Williams. This guy, he finished inside the top 15 of running backs, and he was drafted outside of the RB3 realm. Everybody thought that he was a bust. He went to Dallas on a 1-year deal. No one liked him. He didn't do anything in Denver. He's just going to be there for 1 year until they transferred over and draft a running back this year. Well, there's not a whole lot of running backs in this class. There's about one running back worth a darn, and I don't think Dallas finished high enough to possibly get him. And I think they're going to re-sign him, and I think Javonte Williams is one of the biggest steals of this draft. And he absolutely, like I said, he flourished in that system behind that nice offensive line. Wasn't the greatest. He caught some balls out of the back. And so I think he was one of the biggest steals of this draft.
Yeah, you definitely nailed it. Javonte Williams was a guy that I'm going to pivot on here because I actually had him written for my sleeper because of how late he was drafted, 9th, 10th round ADP going into the season. So I'm definitely copacetic with him being as a draft steal rather than a sleeper because, finishing as RB12 in most standard PPR scoring leagues was a week in, week out guy you had to have in your lineup and really, really helped teams down the stretch. You and I went into the season not knowing if we had a starting running back. We had Javonte Williams and couldn't take him out of our lineup. So I'm totally cool with him as your draft steal. Now, my draft steal, Brant, is a guy that ended up finishing as wide receiver 6 on the season. I've got Chris Olave. This is another guy that you and I acquired in our Cone League. I also got him in our home league. This is a guy that was being drafted in the range of wide receiver 30 to 35, anywhere from the late 5th round in 12-man leagues all the way down to the early 8th round. And this is a guy that finished as wide receiver 6 in front of first-round talents like CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, all these guys that were drafted in front of him. He surpassed and finished well in front of these guys. And this is a guy that, we knew he was hyper-talented, and we've known that for years. It was hospital balls that were keeping him out of being relevant. He had a concussion every other week. He'd have 10 targets, but have 2 catchable balls. And for what it's worth, I like him a lot because he's 0-2 against my Atlanta Falcons. But Tyler Shutt came in under center for the New Orleans Saints and kind of made that offense really start to click, started getting some good balls thrown to Chris Olave, and he was able to feast on that offense, and he definitely ate.
Yeah, absolutely. I do like that. He was at times the only valuable piece there in New Orleans. You did see Juwan Johnson, have a few good games, but yeah, absolutely. Chris Olave was a huge deal where everyone was nervous to take him because of who was going to throw him the football. At times there was talk of Taysom Hill being the starting quarterback there. So yeah, definitely was a steal in the draft. So let's roll over to our sleeper, and I'm going to talk about a guy that most people got off of waivers. He went outside of the top 75 wide receivers, but he finished inside the top 15 wide receivers. From week 11 on, he had a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 9, wide receiver 51 finish. Terrible. Wide receiver 1, wide receiver 17, wide receiver 25, and wide receiver 8. That is Michael Wilson of the Arizona Cardinals. I know that, a lot of that time was with Marvin Harrison out, but Michael Wilson was the go-to guy in that offense. He was at times the only thing in that offense outside of Trey McBride that could catch the ball or even run the ball. And he kept Arizona in a lot of games being able to do that. I mean, he had a couple games of 10-plus catches. This guy was absolutely, if you got him off waivers, you were probably extremely happy, and he probably was a sleeper that moved you on in the fantasy playoffs and just kept moving you along. Like I said, in the playoffs, he finished at 17, 25, and 8. He was a guy that you could slide into your wide receiver 2, and you were pretty happy with that.
Yeah, you definitely are right. I was not necessarily happy with Michael Wilson because of being a Marvin Harrison owner. I wanted that to go the other way, but things happen, and Michael Wilson was a very talented wide receiver that we really kind of saw be showcased there down the stretch. I'm going to talk about a running back that you were able to get off of waivers, and a matter of fact, I did pick him up in late September in our home league, Brant. But this is a guy that when you talk about weeks to end the season, you go back to week 11, RB5. Week 12, RB9. Week 13, RB43. Then RB12, RB9, RB8, RB34, RB14 down the fantasy playoff stretch for a guy that was gotten off of waivers that broke out big time this year. I can't believe I'm talking about him as a sleeper, as a Fatty Award. Kenneth Gainwell. I mean, my goodness, how good was Kenneth Gainwell this year for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Really, honestly, it was very funny to see, but Gainwell finished his RB16 on the season. Jalen Warren was RB17, right next to one another. And you and I were both two of the people that we'd be the first ones to admit we thought it was Caleb Johnson that was going to be the guy that we were talking about the season's end for Pittsburgh. That just never came to fruition. But my goodness, how good was Kenneth Gainwell down the stretch? Jalen Warren was good too, for that matter. But when you talk about a guy that was completely an afterthought in Pittsburgh, and Kenneth Gainwell, to be where he is now at the end of the season as RB16, the immense value that was had from the waiver wires.
Yeah, Gainwell in a league that I own Gainwell in, I thought I had no running back. I was forced to start Gainwell all year, and I ended up finishing fourth in that league where I thought I was tanking at the beginning of the year, and I was on the verge of trading Josh Allen at multiple times. Like, what am I going to do? I don't have a running back, and then here comes Gainwell, like you said, finishing. I'm pretty sure I had him as my RB1 almost all year, and had Colby Parkinson not had his career day in week 17, I would have finished third. Down up 13 points, thinking you're safe, and then he scores 14 or whatever it was. It was like a 1-point victory. But yeah, I wrote Gainwell all the way. That was a huge get for me that I traded, I think, a 3rd-round draft pick for. And he was just a guy that I was like, well, I got to plug a running back in, so I guess it's Gainwell. And then out of nowhere, he had amazing weeks and carried me, like I said, into a 4th place finish.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Brent, drum roll. Let's talk about those MVPs.
I cheated. I went with the true MVP. He led his team to a chance at having the number 1 seed in the NFC, and I went with CMC. Guys were terrified to draft him. He went at the end of the 1st round in most drafts. People were scared to draft him. His age, his injury history, dynasty startups, nobody really wanted him. I think in dynasty startups, he was actually like a 3rd-round draft pick. Redraft leagues, he was at the end of it, and he finished with over 400 fantasy points this year. CMC was my MVP this year. Unfortunately, I own him nowhere, but he definitely was the MVP of fantasy this year.
Yeah, my MVP of fantasy is Bijan Robinson, guy who I believe led the league in all-purpose yards for a running back this year, well over 2,000 between rushing and receiving. Really disappeared from maybe 1 out of 17 games from a fantasy standpoint, all the way to carrying some people in a week 17 in the championship there against the Los Angeles Rams on Monday Night Football. Just the little engine that wouldn't stop. Bijan Robinson is one of the most fun players to watch in football. He's one of the players that if you own him, you love watching him play. If you're playing against him, you almost don't want to even glance at a Falcons game because he's going to be stamped all over it. But Bijan Robinson was the ultimate fatty for me this year. This guy ate every single week, packed on the calories, and just had a wonderful season. I think if I go back and look in a standard scoring league, it was Christian McCaffrey, number 1, Puka, and then Bijan is the number 3 overall player. And if you want to get down to the nuts and bolts of why that is, there's a 6 touchdown discrepancy between CMC and Bijan that really narrows that gap quite a bit. But for me, man, Bijan was just that guy that if you had him on your roster, you never felt like you were out of it.
Yep, absolutely. A guy that could turn your week. You're down 30 points going into a Monday night game, and instantly you won that week. Absolutely, that's another guy that you always love to have in your lineup. There are certain players, CMC, Bijan, Puka Nacua, certain players that you never feel like you're out of a game with or a matchup with, and definitely I can understand that being Bijan Robinson there.
All right, Brent. So just because I don't want to skip over it completely, there is a slate of very good playoff games this week. So I'm just going to ask you not to spend a lot of time talking about it, but let's just go game by game and give our predictions on who we think wins. So our Saturday morning contest, or Saturday afternoon, we have the Rams at the Panthers in the NFC wildcard game. Who do you have there?
I got the Rams. When the Panthers beat them earlier in the year, Stafford turned the ball over 3 times, one of them being a defensive touchdown. Stafford doesn't do that again. I think the Rams slaughter the Panthers.
Okay, I agree. I've got the Rams. The Saturday night game, we've got the Bears or the Packers at the Bears. Where are you at on this one?
I know I'm cheering for the Packers, and I do think they win this game. I think that LaFleur has more playoff experience. I think, you get Love, you get that team pretty much healthy. I know you're still missing some key defensive pieces. I think they've realized that Caleb Williams doesn't know how to play football until the fourth quarter. So I think that the Packers take this one.
Yeah, when you talk about one of the hotter offenses, obviously anytime Ben Johnson's got his hand stamped on something, it's going to be good. I've got the Bears winning this game. I've said all season you and I are neck deep in Packers/Bears country. I've always said whoever's got the home game out of those two ends up becoming the winner. I think the Bears get the nod. It's a 1.5 point game. I think that ends up being about how close this one is.
Okay.
Sunday, we've got to start our slate off, we've got the Bills at Jaguars, another super exciting game, one that I think lights the scoreboard up. Where are you at on this one?
I think Josh Allen gets his first road playoff win. I think he beats Jacksonville. He goes down into that warm weather, and I think Josh Allen comes out on top.
Yeah, when you talk about quarterback MVPs, Josh Allen's up there. But if you talk about recency quarterback MVPs, I don't know how you look past Trevor Lawrence and what that offense is doing with Liam Cohen right now. I actually think the Jaguars walk past the Buffalo Bills. I think they beat them by a full touchdown.
Okay, all right.
All right, afternoon slate on Sunday, we've got the 49ers at the Eagles.
I honestly don't care. I just hope they beat the crap out of each other. I think the Niners actually win this. They go on the road. I do think the Niners win it. I just hope they beat the crap out of each other while playing this game.
Yep, I've got the Niners as well in that one. Sunday night, you've got Chargers at Patriots.
I'm the only, as you see, the only divisional winner that I'm taking this weekend. I think the Patriots walk all over the Chargers. I think this is one of the worst games this week.
Yep, I think the Patriots walk out of there with their heads held high and winners at the end of it. And then probably the grittiest football game of the playoffs, Monday night, we've got the Texans at Steelers.
I just hope the Texans don't kill Aaron Rodgers as they get to him so many times. I think the Houston Texans go into Pittsburgh and beat them. And as you see, I think 5 out of 6 of these games are the wild card teams that win.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah, I agree with you. It's the Texans.
Okay. Yeah. And then that means I just have to sit back and root for the Packers. God, that's so gross. The San Fran Philly game, they're the middle of the road teams that we most likely won't have to see in the second round. So I'm okay with that game. Like I said, I just hope they beat the crap out of each other.
That's fair. No, that's fair, man. All right. So first of all, it was good to be back with you on a Wednesday night. Obviously, a little slower pace than our Sunday start sits were. Doing those for 90 minutes each week kind of zapped us of fantasy, mode. But it's good to be back. It's definitely good to, both of us have something we're looking forward to right now. Hopefully that continues for a few weeks, and both of us are still happy with football. But I know both of us will still be in a good mood next Wednesday when we come back. Same time, same place, roughly same time, and in between that area. But back to doing these every Wednesday, Brant. It's good to be back.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in. You guys join us every Wednesday right around 8 p.m. Eastern time. And as always, stay hungry.
Stay fat, my friends.